Hello, Fermented folks. This is Jeff C. Carter of We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers, where you can join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite folklore, and share original spooky stories. I'm going to be your host for today's panel on the Stoker nominations for middle grade and young adult horror. Let's introduce our panelists, starting with Allie Russell. Allie, can you introduce yourself so people who are just getting the audio can learn the sound of your voice?
Yeah, I'm Allie Russell, and I'm the author of several books for middle schoolers. It Came from the Trees is my first book. Down Came the Spiders is also another book of mine, but Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave is the one that's on the Stoker list.
Alyssa?
My name is Alyssa Alessi. I debuted with a middle grade book called Izzy Hoffman is Not a Witch, but have since then only written adult short fiction. Um, so it's fun to talk about how difficult it actually is to write for middle grade.
So usually I throw to Allie for all of my very technical definitions when it comes to publishing. Allie, you're just a go-to. I'm going to play off the bench. Can you define the age and genre that separate middle grade and young adult?
Yeah, middle grade is typically for ages 8 to 12. There's some trouble among middle grade right now because the big thing is that there's not a ton of middle grade or middle grade or young teen lit, whatever you want to call it, young YA that caters to kids in that like 10 to 13 age space. But typically middle grade is for ages 8 to 12, whereas YA is like 13 and up. And middle grade, it tends to focus on situations that are very specific and focused inward, like on the character, like what's happening in their immediate life, anything that directly impacts them.
You, Kathy Palm and I were talking earlier in the year. We were saying that, or you guys were telling me that YA has a sort of baked in amount of romantic relationship drama that is almost essential to that age range. Would you say that's still true?
I don't read a ton of YA. I know that that was a big thing, in all of my time that I worked in publishing. And I still feel like I talk to authors who, their editors or publishers want them to play up the romantic aspect if they're writing in the YA market. But it's strange too, because like I've talked to like a lot of young people who are like, I'm not even thinking about romance. So I don't know like how publishers are coming to that decision. I think it has more to do with like who is reading a lot of YA. And, in the mid 2000s, like there were a lot of older women 35 plus who were reading YA, and like so I wonder if publishers were trying to appeal to them, and not necessarily to YA audience. So I don't know if it's still as prevalent in terms of like baking it into every YA book that comes out, but it was definitely a thing for a while.
I remember that. There was a lot of hemming and hawing about it. There was a lot of let people like what they like.
Mhm.
Women of this age are getting something from YA that they're not getting anywhere else. And then I feel like recently we've seen a huge shift towards romantasy or
Mhm.
even romance horror. Do you think that demographic is now leaving YA or getting served by this upswell of romantasy and romance in other genres? And Alyssa, I want to know your opinion as well.
I don't know if they've left YA or not. I think it's possible to read both. Like, I think people who were reading YA specifically for that romance element, like they might have, transitioned over to romantasy. And you're right, it's huge. That's all I heard about. I didn't go to BookCon, but that was the general consensus of BookCon is that BookCon basically should have been romantasy con because that was like the bulk of what publishers were pushing. So I don't know if they have left YA behind. And you're right, I don't judge anybody based on, everybody should read whatever they want as long as you're reading. So I don't know if they've left YA entirely or if they, have always held an interest in both, but I definitely think that that's why there is such a big, rise in it because there's a lot of interest in romance as a genre. There always has been. So
Mhm. I think fantasy and romance were two of the biggest for a while. So then collaborating, obviously, it's going to be huge. I don't know why grown women were going to YA for romance. I remember this being a huge topic. also. And I think there's a difference between like young adult first crushes, first boyfriends, and then sexual situations. Like read whatever you want, write whatever you want. But I think there is a huge difference between young adult first crushes and then any type of like sexual relationship, which might still be needed also in a 18-year-old book. But I think romantasy might be a better place for that and what they're looking for.
So, Alyssa, when you wrote Izzy Hoffman is not a witch, were you just more focused on the mystery, the suspense, the magic, the hometown feel, the family secrets? You weren't really thinking about, ooh, is there a relationship? I need to have cooking. Did you have sort of the guide rails of middle grade in mind when you crafted the story or when you were revising?
I was everywhere, Jeff, except for romance. She has one quick little crush, like, "Ooh, yeah, I kind of like my neighbor." But I felt like that was normal for a 13-year-old girl. I know I had crushes when I was 13, but it never left that realm of being like, "Ooh, he's cute." But I was everywhere, and I think Izzy was everywhere. She was dealing with a lot of different problems. There wasn't just the one. There was, like, a lot of what's going on ancestral wise, what's going on with my neighbors, what's going on in my neighborhood, what's going on with my relationship with my mom. Also, kids are dealing with a lot at once.
How scary do you think is appropriate for different ages? And I wonder if the worst person to ask this question is a horror writer, because we were all twisted and warped at an early age and probably should not be self-censoring when it comes to what we expose other kids to.
That's a hard question that I don't think I can answer because I think everybody's tolerance level is incredibly different. Jeff, you had mentioned the last time we spoke, you had said like, "Oh, you didn't think that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like appropriate for a certain audience." And I would argue that, I was that 10-year-old watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I come from a very creepy family. Like, that was my entire childhood. Like, that is what we did on weekends. We watched scary movies. I saw my first horror movie when I was 4. So, like, my tolerance for horror is probably a lot higher than somebody else's. So I think it's tough to say, like, what is acceptable versus not, because we're all over the place, in terms of like what our brain can take in. And I have said this before, and I will continue to say it for the would be book banners and everybody else out there. Kids will self censor. I just came from an event in Pittsburgh where a kid had like read the opening chapter of It Came from the Trees, and you know what? They closed the book because it was too much for them, and I respected that. I was like, "Oh, I apologize." I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," but, like, they knew to, like, close the book and walk away, so, like, I think that will just always be my opinion on what is acceptable versus not, because kids deal with tough things every day, tougher things than I write about. There's some very real and frightening situations that people are dealing with that, like, aside from monsters and, haunted houses and all the things that we tend to put in middle grade. So, and that stuff is like a lot, not the monsters and stuff, but the real life stuff is a lot scarier. So it's not really up for me to say. I just write the things that I think I would have wanted to read at that age. And then it's up to the kid to decide if they want to read it or not.
So, Alyssa, as you are writing more for adults, have you been keeping tabs on the middle grade or YA age ranges?
Always, because I have a high schooler and a third grader. And I just love I love kidlit. I'll forever love kidlit. So it doesn't matter what I'm writing. I'm still going back to my middle grade. I'm still going back to whatever is happening in YA. And I think you're right about the threshold being different for each individual person because Allie and I have that in common where we grew up in these like horror households where I was watching Poltergeist and Freddy Krueger and Halloween and everything else I shouldn't have been watching, probably around 4 years old, same. A lot of that stuff really didn't scare me because I didn't really get it, I guess. Surprisingly, I censor what my children see so much, probably overboard. Where I'm like, "I don't know, do you wanna watch this?" And we'll just kind of, like, peek at it. And, I let them decide. And you're right, they will self-censor. They'll be like, no, it's too scary. The music is too scary." It's always the soundtrack.
See, I think though that you use the word censor, and I don't think that that's what you are doing. I think that you are engaging them and seeing if it's because you just said it. You just said, I asked them, is this something that you want to watch or see? And so you're giving them the option to like peek at something darker or like a scarier world if they want to, but they are not forced to. So I think that like that's a perfect way to handle it.
Thank you. That's true. I guess I am using the wrong word. Goosebumps. My youngest loves Goosebumps, right? The old Are You Afraid of the Dark? She's like, some of those episodes, some
You
of
see the
those
swimming?
episodes are too
There's
scary.
some bangers.
I don't remember the swimming pool one, and we haven't
Oh.
rewatched it yet. And then the newer Are You Afraid of the Dark? Some seasons were scarier than others.
Yeah, we've restarted. We've watched the first season like 3 times already, and it's so good. Like, I love how they approached it. Probably had a lot to do with the fact that DJ McHale, who has always had a deep respect for children's horror, was on the project, but I agree, the 2nd season, the creatures and monsters were definitely a lot scarier, and we haven't finished that one yet. But yeah, it's almost like it ratchets it up for, as the kids grow up.
Mm.
Is this the newer
Yeah, the
seasons?
newer one. So I think there's a 3rd season out, which I haven't seen, but the 2nd season is that the lighthouse monster
That was
one?
terrifying. That was terrifying. We all watched it together, and my kids were really scared.
I'm scared.
I feel like there's a problem with creep. By creep, I mean slow progression, but also creepiness, but also sexuality. When you first start watching, for example, a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's very much rooted in the high school experience. And then if you're following her every year, she eventually gets to college and starts having college problems and college relationships. And she loses her virginity and she's traumatized and she's meeting toxic men, abusers, all sorts of scary things. Her mother dies. Like, it gets really super intense. But because it starts off as a show that's kind of for tweens or young adults, they're going to binge that whole show. And so when you put someone down in front of the first episode of something like Buffy or Are You Afraid of the Dark, you are essentially putting them down in front of the most recent and most extreme version of that show.
Yeah, I think, back in the '90s, they could not account for streaming.
Right.
Because at that time, you were growing with the show. Like, I remember watching stuff like Angel when I was in high school and then growing and getting older as the show got older, and Angel was always, a little more mature. But I know exactly what you're trying to say, Jeff. And I think that it's just an unfortunate side effect, like, where they were trying to, like, possibly grow the show with the viewers, but not being able to account for what has become of streaming and where it's like people sit down and binge entire seasons in a weekend. It's tough.
You can still sort of do that with your books because publishing takes so long that the
Mhm.
children actually are they actually are growing with your books.
Yeah. You got to time it right though, because you don't want your book to take so long, which
Mm.
is happening sometimes, like people's books getting delayed or pushed back, and you don't want your book to take so long that like, they outgrow the series. So it's a delicate little dance.
Yeah, there's such a balancing act between the lit side where characters can stay one age forever and the film and television side where as soon as you cast like an 8-year-old, they literally start changing by the day. And so between seasons, they look like totally different people. Alyssa, as a parent who's been a fan of Kidlit and has been sharing it with kids of different ages, where do you see this category going, changing? What trends are there? Do you see it evolving or improving, regressing?
I feel like everything just recycles after 10 years or so. I don't know if
Mm.
that's true. Allie actually works in publishing. I'm just a consumer. But it seems like everything cycles back, and then kids get to discover the same things that we discovered 25, 30 years ago all over again, sometimes with a fresh new take, sometimes with the same old story, they just haven't heard it. But that's fun to see, I love that. Like, my daughter discovering werewolves, she's like, "Could these be real?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, they could, who knows?" Um, so I'm not sure what new things. I mean, possibilities are endless. I'm sure you could come up with new things, but recycling the same old vampires, werewolf, Bigfoot. Like, my daughter doesn't know anything about Bigfoot. She recently discovered the Loch Ness Monster and, like, fell into a whole obsession with Nessie for a while. There's, different takes on fish people. That Disney movie Luca came out, which wasn't
Mm.
horror, but is kinda creepy.
I know I
Mm.
turned it off. I was kind of creeped out by it. I was like, don't like it. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's a little weird. They're not quite mermaids, but they're not fish.
That
I
movie
don't know. It was
sucked.
kinda it was weird.
I did not like it.
We talked through it, but it was kinda scary.
You Allie, since I ask this question to you every 3 months, let's get your latest, greatest, most up to date with all the data, information. Any new trends? Anything other than soft censorship?
To Alyssa's point, I think you're absolutely right. Things trend, they recycle. It's interesting to watch younger generations do, see, experience, take in things that we took in, when we were their age and slightly older. But it's due to them, and so that's what matters. Like they give new life to stuff. When new people are like Bigfoot for a while, I've been hearing, oh, cryptids are out in middle grade fiction. Tell that to the literal 4,000 children that I just visited across the country, because every single one of them, I told you guys before we started recording, I was getting grilled about cryptids. And half of them believe, half of them don't, and that's fine. Like we want, that diversity of opinion. We want Scullies to keep the molders,
Teach the
in check.
controversy.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's tough to say like, "Oh, that's out," because all it takes is for somebody to write it in a way that engages and interests a lot of people, and then suddenly it's back, just like that. And so I feel that way like about cryptids. Like cryptids will never really go out of style, because when you hit that age, like that 8 to 10, where you're just discovering, like, wait, there might be stuff out there that's like not in zoos, that my parents can't explain it. Like, I think they get really into that, like, the possibility of it. So, yeah, I think things that cycle back, cryptids, people will say they're out. I think they're very in. You can also tell that too, it came from the trees, which is still doing okay. So I'm like, the kids are okay, cryptids are okay. I'm seeing a lot of, the kids are really into rituals right now everywhere I went. I got asked, like, "Do you do rituals?" And I'm like, "What do you mean by ritual?" And they're like Ouija boards, or do you say Bloody Mary in the mirror? And I'm like, "No, because I'm
Not
terrified."
anymore.
But they do, they're doing it, like, in the bathroom at school. Like, they go to the bathroom at school and they say Bloody Mary in the mirror. So they're very into, like, occult horror, I will say, like, and some of the, like, supernatural stuff like that's very in. I'm seeing a decent amount of serial killer horror for middle grade, and it's not too graphic like Dahmer level, but it's more just like the general definition, like somebody who's killed multiple people, and then like their spirit or their ghost, is haunting. Which I mean, we had that with Freddy Krueger. So like,
That was
um,
not for us, though.
I mean, but it what like teenagers, like you start thinking like middle grade,
Yeah.
right? It's on that cusp. So like I know, certain things when I was 13, they would have seemed like cheesy to me, So I did go for like the slightly darker, more horrific stuff like Freddy Krueger. So I'm seeing more some of that. Yeah, I think those are probably the top three that I would say I'm seeing for horror anyway. I can't speak for general fiction.
Do you think that has anything to do with Adam Caesar's Clown in a Cornfield? Because I feel like that really went nuts.
Mm.
And I feel like everyone was talking about slashers again after that. More so after the movie came out, everyone's like, "Teenage slashers," like it was this new thing.
I think that they have always been into it because, again, another thing when I do school visits. Do you know about Scream? Yes,
Oh.
I grew up
What are
on
these schools, Allie?
it.
I wanna talk to these kids.
Schools in
These kids
Texas.
are cool.
Like, they love Scream, they love rituals. And Scream, I always think about, like, "Oh, that's interesting." But I saw Scream when I was, like, 9 or 10, because
Same.
again, that's the kind of family that I was in, but, like, you start thinking about Scream and slashers, and one of the, like, key plot points in Scream is, "Oh, are you if you're a virgin, you're safe, but if you're not, you're gonna die." And, like, that's, like, right, the whole plot of, like, the first Scream movie, so I'm always like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about Scream, but yes, I know Scream." But they know it, so I don't engage, but, like, slashers, I think, have just been part of their world, because Scream the success of stuff like Scream and, Halloween and all those other slasher flicks.
I think one of the invisible pillars of the slasher genre is that for a while, by and large, it's almost always about teenagers and teenage relationships and teenage situations. And so they were marketed to teenagers, but kids always look up at older kids. They want to be like, emulate, know about older kids. So it's just one more reason why the slasher genre would be so compelling to them. They don't make a lot of slashers about kids yet, although from what Allie tells me, I guess they're making more and more YA and middle grade books about serial killers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could very well be coming. It just, somebody who does it in a way that, is appealing to kids. And I'm not going to censor that, for them. Like, they're watching Scream. Like, I think somebody, if that's what they're watching, I think somebody could approach, the topic of slashers or, serial killers or stuff in a way that is feasible for that 10 to like 13 plus age range to engage with. Go for it, I guess.
I wonder if anyone would finance a movie where a bunch of kids had to deal with the slasher. I think that's probably the last line in the sand left in our media landscape.
I think that, we kinda see it with some stuff, like, but it's usually not framed as, like, the person is, like, a slasher. And it's most prevalent, I think, in the, like, kids in a treehouse watching the neighbor kinda
Hmm.
story format, or, like, the neighbor is up to no good. I'm seeing that, like, in a lot of, like, fiction, and even, like, movies that I think, some kids might be watching, like, oh, what is it's set in, is it 1984? The kid's neighbor is a serial killer, and, oh, it's gonna bug me. Anyway, it came out a few years ago, and I think a lot of kids have, like, particularly seen that movie. So I think it kinda there, but it just presents itself as, like, mystery fiction.
Right. Mystery and suspense. I wonder if a lot of the ritual and occult stuff that kids are into, to me, that feels very TikTok. It feels very creepypasta, and
Reddit.
all
Yeah.
that creepypasta stuff from Reddit got just exported to TikTok and YouTube channels to basically just rip off whatever is on Reddit. It sort of has that stink of TikTok and Reddit. And it's funny because Bloody Mary predates Reddit by a damn sight, and all these rituals and all the Ouija boards and stuff. Alyssa, did you play with Ouija boards and did you do all those
So
rituals as a kid?
so I feel so boring because I just had a conversation with Cody Crowley, who apparently was just scaring the shit out of everyone as a kid with Ouija boards
Those
and
are so
talking about
funny.
being possessed and like all of these things. And I was just like, wow, girl, you are so hardcore. So for me, I played with the Ouija board once, believe it or not, in my friend's bathroom following Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary, I did all the time, but Ouija boards were not allowed in my house, and my mother was, like, very serious about this and very superstitious, if you will, and just very adamant. No Ouija boards in the house, nothing with, like, Ouija board prints, none of that. Don't play with the Ouija board. You're gonna attract an evil spirit and it's gonna attach itself to you and you're gonna be possessed. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, that's way too far after all of the possession movies I've seen as a kid. I'm like, nah. I'm like, I'm not trying to be possessed. I'm not doing that. So till this day, I do not have a Ouija board. And I haven't played with one since that time in my friend's bathroom when I was, I think, 11 years old. We played Bloody Mary, Ouija board, and then watched it. It was
That
like
sounds like a
Were they
fantastic afternoon.
were they
common, very
sleepovers?
common. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very common
They're all
sleepover.
they're all sleepovers are elite for this reason. This is
Yeah,
the
because
kind
we
of
would.
stuff we are doing, like, you know.
Hmm. Or we would play Bloody Mary and then be like, let's watch The Craft. And then play Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board for
Yeah,
hours.
that's where the ritual starts after you watch The
Hours.
Craft.
So I am seeing this whole TikTok in your face, like, let's do these really quick rituals in a way where my For You page stares me. If I flip through, which I try not to do, I don't like to spend too much time on TikTok. I'm already on Instagram enough. I'll come across a face that's just like, "Oh, this card, this is for you. This is for you. Are you a Capricorn?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" And they're just yelling out all of these random things sometimes that don't make sense at all, but I don't think it's for people who understand or practice on their own. They're just, like, talking about random crystals and random tarot cards and just calling out fortunes. It's very, like, remember Miss Cleo?
Call me now.
Yes, it reminds me so much of that. They're like, "You can DM me and I'll message you this and that," and I'm like, "This is seriously like the new age Miss Cleo." They are just making so much money. I think children.
As you said, Alyssa, just a 10-year cycle. Everything old is new again. Miss
Mhm.
Cleo is back for the TikTok
Miss Cleo.
era.
Hey, she probably would have killed in the TikTok
Oh,
era.
she would have crushed it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
How is Miss Cleo doing? I haven't checked in on her in a while.
I think the last time I looked her up, did she get charged with something?
I think so. I thought there was some sort of lawsuit,
Yeah, a
and
lawsuit of
then
some sort, but
that's a shame.
Allie, did you play with Ouija boards and do Bloody Mary and all that when you were growing up?
no, I grew up Catholic. I went to private school for just about all my life. 5 out of 7 days a week, I was getting a fire and brimstone lesson in religion class about all the evils of like demons. And so I demons are like one thing where I'm like, that's not my favorite genre. um, even though I don't practice Catholicism anymore, but like, I grew up like that, and that fear was very much instilled in me at like a very young age. So I didn't mess around with Ouija boards or anything like that. I probably did the Bloody Mary thing at like sleepovers. We watched things like The Craft. I've become a little more open to owning Ouija boards, but I don't use them. I have 3 tiny ones. They're like this big, and my logic is if the Ouija boards are tiny, the ghosts are tiny. So not really. But I did have a big Ouija board, and I used it like, for photos and stuff.
Big or full size?
Guys, I'm asking my cat who was nearby questions, and then I went, "Oh no, this Ouija board is going to think that you're talking when really you're just talking to your cat." So I try not to take it out the box.
That's what my mother used to say, like, "You're gonna be tricked, you're gonna think you're talking to one spirit, but it's really a demon," and I'm like, "Okay,
Hmm.
no." But I do use a spirit box. So, I don't know
Oh,
where the logic is, there's no logic. Like, I actively go out with a spirit box and ask questions, and you saw Jeff, sometimes we receive answers. Jeff and I ghost hunted together last year at StokerCon. It was a
oh,
ton of
fun.
fun.
It was at
Yeah.
midnight. There was a full moon, and we went to an old cemetery, and it was awesome.
And some, like, colonial ghosts were, like, trying to engage, but then at the same time being, like, really trying to lead the conversation. If I was asking, like, boring historical questions, they they were literally like, "Next question, move along, please." Right,
Like
Jeff?
they're
Do you remember that?
I remember that very well.
and you're not asking them the questions they want to be asked. You're not getting to the burning topics.
No, and I was trying to communicate with the children of it was like a family plot.
Mm.
It was a dad, a wife, mom, and how many children? Maybe, like, 3 children or something like
There's a
that.
lot
I
of
was
big families
trying
interred there, yeah.
I was trying to communicate with one of the children, and Monique Asher, who was doing, like, the headphones she was, like, on headphone duty where you can't hear anything else, you're just calling out whatever you hear, and she yells from, like, 5 plots down. She was like, "No, talk to me," and we were like, "Oh." That dad was, like, serious.
Allie, you
I
should have
think
been
it was
there.
the dad.
Oh.
No, I shouldn't have.
"You don't wanna ghost hunt with us, Allie?"
Oh, thank you. Because see, I do believe stuff can follow you home.
Yeah,
That's why you
we
got to use the
say
ghost brush that I sent you, Allie.
That's true.
you have a ghost brush?
No, it's like a thing that they used to put outside of cemeteries where you would brush your shoes on it after you left the cemetery so that you wouldn't take anything home with you.
I need one of those.
Yeah,
You might.
you both need those. Alyssa, since you have had kids in different grades, I'm always fascinated by the little psychic cracks in the armor where something that is seemingly innocuous gets in and just freaks a kid out. Patton Oswalt has this great joke about how he was watching TV with his kids, and when he turned the TV on, it was like some guy transforming into a werewolf. And he was like, oh no. And he flipped the channel to Mr. Goodbody. There was a guy who was like teaching anatomy and was wearing like a jumpsuit with all the bones and all the organs on it. And he's like, okay, some good educational content. And then he said to his kid, like, were you afraid by that first thing we saw? They're like, no, that was a dog wearing pants. That was funny. And then the kid had like nightmares about this skeleton man who was like showing all his organs. You know, you do your best. You try to use parental discretion when you're introducing your kids to horror. But is there any weird thing that's gotten in and absolutely freaked them out, like Teletubbies or stuff like that?
It's funny that you say Teletubbies because that's the most recent thing that I showed my children, and they were, like, screaming at the TV. They were like, "Why is the sun a baby? Shut this off."
Good
They
questions. Good questions to ask.
they were screaming, and then they were concerned. We watched about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of this nonsense, and they were concerned for adults now who watched that as children because they were like, "They're not talking." Like, a baby was just staring at the screen and nothing's happening, they're just making noises. That's not good for babies. Like, babies need interaction, you have to talk to them. How are they gonna learn the language if they're just making noises? Like, yeah, they were not into it. They were like, "This is creepy." Like, they're trying to, like, brainwash babies. And I was like, "Yeah, I think you're right." It is creepy because they weren't talking.
They weren't saying anything you could
That's
understand.
right. They were speaking on the kid
Yes.
frequency.
Well, my kids are too old because they didn't get it. They were
Yeah.
like Mila is 9 and she's the youngest.
Allie, were you freaked out by some innocuous thing when you were growing up, despite all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and other things you were watching?
For me, it was sharks. As an adult, like my very rational brain knows that like sharks are just creatures that like, exist in the ocean. Like killer whales are technically more dangerous than sharks. But I have carried this like deep fear in me of sharks because when I was a kid, and I tell this story all, so you might have heard it already, Jeff, but like when I was a kid, one of the things my dad said to me, and it's one of those things where it's like I think parents sometimes say things and don't realize how it's going to stick with a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad said to me, "Well, you know about sharks, right?" And I said, "No, what?" He said, "They eat one leg and they save the other leg for later." And that has, like, stayed with me ever since. So sharks are, like, the most terrifying thing, and poor sharks, right? Like, they didn't do anything to deserve this, like, Jaws did this to them, like, sharks, like, they're just regular creature, but you can like, there's a chill that goes through me when I start looking at photos of sharks just because of that line.
Last time you and I spoke, Alyssa, I had to take you to task for being in the pocket of Big Spider. And now I think you might be in the pocket of Big Shark because, yes, sharks are just normal creatures, but they are creatures that eat people, unlike killer whales, which almost never, ever attack people. And there is this sort of a game that people play with statistics like, well, you're more likely to die in a car accident on the way to the beach than you are to get attacked by a shark. It's, well, first of all, you're factoring in all the people that live in landlocked states and all the people that don't swim. Those are all in the pool of statistics. So what you really need to look at is statistically, how likely are you to be attacked by a shark if you do go in the water?
Mm.
And then the numbers start to change. So I just don't want out here laundering the reputation of more creepy crawlies and beasties.
Yeah. I'm not afraid of sharks at all. And Allie, you used to live in Massachusetts.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you went to the Cape as a kid, but there are signs everywhere, like sharks in the water. Every summer we hear about like great white sharks on the coast of Massachusetts. It's like this huge thing. But I was never afraid of sharks.
I'm from Pennsylvania, so like the fear of sharks got worse when I moved to Massachusetts, and that's probably
Oh.
why I went to the beach. Probably I can count on one hand the number of times I went to the beach, and definitely don't go more than like ankle deep.
Well, you know what they
Well, it
say.
wouldn't help.
They eat one leg and they save the other.
I
So even being
really
ankle
don't
deep.
I don't know where they were putting the other leg either. It's not like sharks wear pants, but like it just
A little place called Davy Jones' Locker. That's where they'd save the leg.
So I was terrified of being kidnapped as a child because I watched Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted like faithfully.
Mhm.
So all of these like scary things that were supposed to be scary weren't scary at all. They were fun. But being kidnapped just felt so real. And I'm still terrified for like my children. Like they don't go anywhere without me. I'm like helicopter on top of them, walking my middle schooler to school. Now she's in high school, so she goes by herself. But my third grader, she has classmates who walk home by themselves. And I'm like,
That used to be normal.
yeah, I did. I did it, but I was terrified the entire 1 mile or whatever I was walking. I'm like, "That
Well,
car looks like they're going slow."
I
Sometimes.
bet your situational awareness was pretty good, right? Because the terror kept you sharp.
Yeah, definitely. I would think so, but then I was like I was the type of kid who would fight a lot anyway, but then when Buffy came out, it was really like, "Alright, I'm gonna learn how to fight." Like, we're like, real people and vampires, like, we're gonna beat people up. I feel like now as an adult, I let my guard down so much. Vampire might get me on a
Yeah.
dark path. Maybe.
When you're out ghost hunting.
Yeah, I feel like my guard's kind of down unless my children are there. When my kids are there, I'm, like, hyper aware, but by myself, I'm just enjoying the quiet. I'm not even paying attention.
All right, good to know. let's
I
let's
know.
circulate that as widely as possible through this video and podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe next time, Allie, we can contact Alyssa's spirit through a Ouija board.
I will
possibly. Or
communicate. I will communicate.
Just to get back on track briefly, so I could drive it on home, are there any contemporary middle grade or YA horror books from the last 5 or so years that have really stood out to you or that you would like to recommend? I'm going to start with Allie since you've probably got stacks all around you.
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you asked me about books and I've never read a book a day in my life. So let me open up my story craft to see what I've read recently. I just finished Insha Fitzpatrick's The Girl Who Loved Monsters. And it's a graphic novel. It's illustrated by Ashley Robin Franklin. And that was fantastic. It's about a girl who discovers a book called Liber de Monstrum or something like I think that's the title of it. But it's a book of monsters. And so it like brings monsters to her small town. So she's got to like battle them. Fantastic werewolf transformation scenes. Like all throughout. It's going to be a full color, but I read the black and white. That was really good. I also read Remy Lai's Ghost Book, which was fantastic. I'm naming all graphic novels. Oh, I just finished Mary Averling's The Burn Beast, which was also really good. She introduces a new-ish, or at least I haven't heard of it, but a newish kind of cryptid. You know, I'm talking about cryptids never really go out of style. It just takes somebody, doing it in an inventive way. And she's got like a really cool middle grade story about rituals and fire demons, which in this like when do you know like Adam Neville's The Ritual? That creature. There's something that looks kind of similar in her book, and I'm not spoiling anything because it's on the cover, but like, yeah, those are a few of the last ones that I've read, and I have my favorites that I always recommend, like The Girl and the Ghost and Hide and Seeker. So there's always good middle grade floating around.
How about you, Alyssa? Have you read or shared anything with your kids lately that you want to recommend?
I am behind on my middle grade. I have some middle grade on my list. Mary Averling was one of them, but Burn Beast isn't out yet.
No, I read the galley, but it's good. get it when it
Yeah,
comes
so
out.
that is on my list. Ghoul Scouts Honor is also on my, like, immediate list. I plan on reading that in the next month or so, and that Carrie Blankenship, that's on my, like, next up to read because 'cause I'm assuming there's some type of Ouija board use.
Allie, what are you working on next?
I'm working on babysitter horror, which is funny that Alyssa just mentioned that. I love babysitter horror, and there's just not enough of it. So I'm hoping to add to the canon. And I'm about halfway through the manuscript, and the thing that I'm struggling with now is something we were talking about. Like, does it need to be YA or does it need to be for kids in that 10 to, third? Because that's kind of the age where like you're watching your younger siblings sometimes. Maybe you start getting your first babysitting gigs. And like you said, Jeff, kids that age tend to read up. So that's the hang up right now. But it's been fun to write.
Awesome. How about you, Alyssa?
So I'm finishing up 2 projects that are not considered kidlit at all. But I hate to say this, but I'm really looking forward to being done with those 2 things so I can move on to something that I really wanna work on, and that's a YA Bridgewater Triangle horror that I've been dying to write and actually have, like, a whole synopsis typed out, which I never do. But I feel like, okay, like, my heart's really there. The synopsis is done. I actually outlined. I don't do that. I really wanna get into that character, and I really wanna put myself in her shoes. I don't know how much I wanna put myself in her shoes because she is kind of like a cryptid influencer online, so I'm not really an influencer. I don't know how much I wanna get into that, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So there'll be some mystery, some missing persons cases, and TikTok, unfortunately.
That
That sounds
sounds,
amazing.
yeah.
Yay, thank you.
Speaking of mystery, Allie, can you just give us an overview of Mystery James, the 2-book series, the new book that's out, your Stoker nomination?
Yeah. So Mystery James Digs Her Own Grave came out last September, and it is about Mystery James, who was abandoned in a cemetery, raised in a funeral home, and she can smell ghosts. And when her adoptive aunt, gets accused of grave robbing, she has to like clear her family's name. So she does lots of investigating. It's a duology, so there's only 2 books in the series. That are planned. And the second book is coming out this September, and it is more mystery. But this time there is something going on at the funeral home, some poltergeist activity, and we get to see some old villains make another appearance. And I hope I've tied up this duology in like a way that leaves readers feeling satisfied. But it's coming out September 2026.
Look at that cover.
That cover's
Incredible.
beautiful.
Yeah, Dev Forster is the illustrator of the covers for Mystery James, and he also does the artwork inside. And I just love Dev's work. He does all types of like spooky, supernatural stuff.
Those 2 books side by side are going to look amazing. Alyssa, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram, mostly Pages in the Graveyard. TikTok, the same name, but I really don't get TikTok, so mostly Instagram.
Or a spirit box at,
Or a Ouija
yeah,
board.
near you, or a Ouija board. You'll probably have better luck with the spirit box. Allie, where can people find you online?
I'm probably most active on Instagram, One Dark Alley, ALLY. But also, if you go to my website, you can use my contact form, or I have a Gmail address located there. What is my website? AllieRussBooks.com.
Perfect. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for talking about middle grade and YA horror and the Stoker nominations and all of the weird things we did and saw as kids that have made us this way. I always love talking to you guys, and I can't wait to see both of you soon.
Same.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Links are in the show notes. Please subscribe and follow. You can find me at jeffccarter.com and pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black, 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular.
you really want to know?
Okay, I was wondering who the father of my baby was.
All right, let's take a look. The Miss Cleo DNA test. I'm solely searching for the father of your baby. Oh, it's the one that's very unpleasant, okay?
Okay.
And he's also the one that had another girlfriend while he was sleeping with you.
Yes, he did.
Yep, that's him. That's the daddy. The cards can reveal things that you will never see by yourself. Call me now for your free tarot reading.
Call 1-800-980-8637.